The music was loud enough to shake the glasses on the tables, but somehow I could still hear my husband's silence. I was standing in the middle of the dance floor with my ex, Daniel, laughing like I hadn't seen him in years. The truth was, I had planned the whole thing. I knew exactly where my husband, Ethan, was sitting. I knew exactly what he could see. And every time I turned in Daniel's arms, I made sure Ethan was looking. I wanted him jealous. I wanted him to finally care. For months, I had felt invisible in my own marriage. Ethan worked late, came home exhausted, answered questions with one-word replies, and rarely looked at me the way he used to. I had convinced myself that jealousy would wake something up inside him. I was terribly wrong. Daniel leaned closer and said, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" I smiled. "Absolutely." He glanced toward Ethan. "Your husband looks like he wants to kill someone." "That's the point." Daniel laughed nervously, but I didn't. I wanted Ethan to get angry. I wanted him to stand up, cross that room, grab my hand, and tell me he couldn't stand watching another man hold me. Instead, Ethan simply watched. He didn't shout. He didn't interrupt. He didn't even look angry. He just sat there with his hands folded, staring at me with an expression I couldn't understand. Then Daniel spun me around. For one brief second, my eyes met Ethan's. His face was completely calm. Too calm. The smile disappeared from my face. Ethan slowly stood. I expected him to come toward us. He didn't. He picked up his jacket, placed some money on the table, and walked toward the exit. I froze. "Ethan?" He stopped. He turned his head slightly but didn't look back at me. Then he said quietly, "Enjoy the dance." And he walked out. The music suddenly sounded painfully loud. I pulled away from Daniel. "Wait here." I hurried outside. Ethan was already halfway across the parking lot. "Ethan!" He stopped, but still didn't turn around. I caught up with him, breathing hard. "What was that?" He finally looked at me. "What did you want me to do?" "I wanted you to say something." "Like what?" "I don't know. Something." He stared at me for several seconds. Then he gave a small, almost sad smile. "You got what you wanted." My stomach tightened. "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." He stepped closer. "You wanted to know whether I was jealous." I swallowed. And now you know." I waited for him to say more. Instead, he looked past me toward the restaurant. "Go back inside." "Ethan." "Go." His voice wasn't angry. That scared me more than anger would have. He walked away. I stood there watching his car disappear down the street, trying to convince myself that I had won. But deep down, something felt terribly wrong. When I returned to the restaurant, Daniel was waiting beside the table. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah." But I wasn't. The rest of the evening felt strange. I barely spoke. Daniel eventually left, and I drove home alone. When I opened the front door, the house was completely dark. "Ethan?" No answer. I switched on the lights. His suitcase was gone. I stared at the empty space beside the bedroom closet. Then I noticed something on the kitchen counter. A white envelope. My name was written across it in Ethan's handwriting. My hand started shaking. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I read the first line. "I'm not leaving because you danced with Daniel." My heart began pounding. I continued. "I'm leaving because tonight confirmed something I've been afraid to admit for a long time." I sat down. There was another line beneath it. "You don't know what I discovered 3 weeks ago." I stopped breathing for a moment. 3 weeks ago? What had he discovered? I read on. "I wanted to confront you. I wanted to ask you directly. But after tonight, I realized I don't need an explanation anymore." My fingers tightened around the paper. Then came the sentence that made my entire body go cold. "Tomorrow morning, you'll receive everything you need to understand why I walked away." There was no signature, no goodbye, nothing else. I immediately called him, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. There was only one sentence. "You should have asked Ethan what happened 3 weeks ago." My heart raced. I typed back, "Who is this?" The message showed as read. Then another message arrived. "Someone who knows what you did." I stared at the screen. What I did. I suddenly remembered every late-night conversation, every deleted message, every time I had complained about Ethan to Daniel. But none of that explained what Ethan had discovered. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, there was an attachment, a photograph. I opened it, and the moment I saw the picture, the blood drained from my face. It wasn't a photograph of me and Daniel. It was a photograph of Ethan, standing outside a lawyer's office, and beside him was a woman I had never seen before. I zoomed in. She was holding Ethan's hand, and on her finger was a ring. My ring, the one I had lost 6 months earlier. I stared at the picture in disbelief. Then another message appeared. Tomorrow, you'll find out who she is. I dropped the phone onto the table. For the first time that night, I realized something terrifying. Maybe Ethan hadn't walked away because he was jealous. Maybe he had walked away because he had already made a decision long before I ever stepped onto that dance floor. And whatever he had planned for tomorrow, I had a feeling my entire marriage was about to collapse. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph again. Ethan standing outside that lawyer's office. The mysterious woman beside him, her hand holding his, and that ring, the ring I had lost 6 months ago. By sunrise, I had convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the picture was old. Maybe the woman was a relative. Maybe the message was a cruel prank. But when I walked into the kitchen, I found another envelope waiting for me. This one wasn't from Ethan. There was no name on it. Inside was a flash drive. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one video. I clicked play. The screen showed Ethan sitting in a quiet office. Across from him sat a woman, the same woman from the photograph. I leaned closer. Then Ethan spoke. I need you to tell me everything. The woman lowered her eyes. I already told you what I know. Ethan placed a folder on the table. No, you told me what she wanted you to believe. My heart stopped. The woman looked directly at him. Your wife. I felt the room spinning. I paused the video. My first instinct was anger, then fear. I played it again. The woman continued. She came to me months ago. Ethan leaned forward. Why? Because she was afraid you would find out. My breathing became shallow. I whispered, find out what? The video suddenly ended. I stared at the screen. There was no explanation, no conclusion, just another file. I opened it. It contained dozens of photographs. Some were of me, some were of Ethan, some were of Daniel, but the dates confused me. The earliest photograph had been taken nearly a year before. It showed Daniel and me sitting at a coffee shop. I remember that day. Daniel had contacted me after years of no communication. I had told Ethan we were only catching up, but the next photograph showed Daniel outside my office. Then another showed him entering my apartment building. Then another showed us talking in my car. None of the pictures showed anything inappropriate, but together, they created a story that looked terrible. I kept scrolling. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A photograph of Daniel handed me an envelope. I remember that envelope. He had given it to me because I had asked him to help with a financial problem. I had never told Ethan, but the photograph made it look like something else entirely. Then I found the final picture. It showed me standing outside the same lawyer's office Ethan had visited. I had never been there. At least, I didn't remember being there. I looked at the date. 6 months earlier. The exact week my wedding ring disappeared. My phone suddenly rang. It was Daniel. I answered immediately. Where are you? There was silence. Then he said, you need to stop looking. My heart pounded. What do you know? Everything. Then tell me. He exhaled slowly. I warned you this would happen. What would happen? You tried to make Ethan jealous. His voice became colder. And now you've given him exactly what he needed. I gripped the phone. What are you talking about? Daniel didn't answer. Daniel. Finally, he said, meet me at the old cafe. Why? Because there are things I should have told you months ago. He hung up. I drove there immediately. Daniel was sitting in the corner booth. He looked exhausted. The moment I sat down, he pushed a folder toward me. I should have told you the truth. I opened it. Inside were copies of bank statements, emails, photographs, and legal documents. My eyes moved across the pages. Then I saw Ethan's name. What is this? Daniel looked away. 3 weeks before tonight, Ethan hired a private investigator. I stared at him. Why? Because someone had been using your identity. My heart skipped. What? Daniel leaned forward. Someone was opening accounts, moving money, and signing documents in your name. I couldn't speak. Ethan thought you were doing it. Why would he think that? Because the evidence pointed toward you. I felt tears burn my eyes. Who was doing it? Daniel looked at me. That's the problem. He slid one photograph across the table. I recognized the woman immediately. The woman from Ethan's video. She was the one helping him. Who is she? Daniel shook his head. Her name is Rachel. Who is Rachel? Daniel hesitated. Ethan's sister. I stared at him. Ethan had never mentioned a sister. Not once. That's impossible. No. Daniel opened another document. She changed her name years ago. I looked at the photograph again. She's alive? Yes. Why have I never heard about her? Daniel's expression changed. Because Ethan told everyone she was dead. My entire body went cold. What? Daniel lowered his voice. She disappeared after a family scandal. Ethan blamed himself for what happened. He cut her out of his life. I shook my head. That doesn't explain the documents. It will. He pulled out another photograph. This one showed Rachel entering my house. I stared at it. When was this? 5 months ago. I remember that day. I had been at work. Ethan had told me he was home alone. My hands began shaking. Why would she come to my house? Daniel looked at me. She wasn't there to steal anything. Then why? He slowly pushed one final document toward me. It was a legal agreement. My name was on it, but the signature wasn't mine. I looked at Daniel. What is this? A property transfer. My heart sank. What property? The house. I couldn't breathe. According to the document, I had supposedly agreed to transfer ownership of our home, but I had never signed it. Daniel pointed at the signature. Someone forged your name. Who? He looked directly into my eyes. Rachel. Everything suddenly connected. The missing ring, the mysterious documents, the photographs, Ethan's silence. But one question remained. Why would Ethan believe I was involved? Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. There's one more thing. He showed me a message. It had been sent from my number. The message said, I know what Rachel is doing. I'm helping her. I stared at the screen. I never sent this. I know. How? Because I received it before you ever met Rachel. I looked up. Daniel's face had gone pale. Someone had spent months building a case against me. I stood up. I need to find Ethan. Daniel grabbed my wrist. Wait. I turned around. What? There's something you don't know. What? Daniel looked terrified. Ethan already knew Rachel was alive. I froze. Then why did he pretend she was dead? Daniel swallowed. Because he was working with her. The cafe seemed to disappear around me. What? He hired her. No. He wanted to find out who was manipulating your identity. I stared at him. So Ethan knew? Daniel nodded. He knew you were innocent. My chest tightened. Then why did he leave me? Daniel's eyes filled with sympathy. Because he discovered something else. What? He reached into the folder and pulled out one final photograph. It showed me standing with Daniel. But this photograph was different. It had been taken 2 years earlier, before Ethan and I were married. On the back was a handwritten sentence. I read it once. Then again, my hands went numb. She didn't marry Ethan by accident. I looked at Daniel. What does that mean? He didn't answer. My phone suddenly buzzed. A new message appeared. This time it came from Ethan. Come to the house alone. A second message followed. And bring Daniel. Then a third. It's time you both learned why I married you. I stared at those words, unable to move. All this time, I had believed Ethan was a victim of my jealousy. I thought I had pushed him away. But now I realize something much more frightening. Maybe our marriage had never been what I thought it was. Maybe Ethan had been hiding a secret from the very beginning. And maybe the dance that night hadn't destroyed our marriage. Maybe it had finally exposed the truth.